common theme from the City of Red Deer's perspective and response to this budget is that municipal infrastructure is retained, but local health and social infrastructure needs are not fully met in this provincial budget. Yesterday's budget, of course, means that Red Deer will continue to see municipal infrastructure funding for 3 more years, which is welcome news, but it does not fully respond to our region's requests for health and social infrastructure. One of our great concerns, of course, heading into this budget, which we have often highlighted, is the future of the Municipal Sustainability Initiative, or otherwise known as MSI Funding. We are pleased that municipal capital funding is stable for now, as the city's capital plan relies heavily on this grant funding source. Each year, the City of Red Deer builds our budgets with both community and province building in mind, and this, of course, necessitates a focus on infrastructure. So we were pleased to see that MSI remains stable over the next 3 years, and the provincial government has marked their intention to develop a new formula for the grant program that will follow with that. And we, of course, look forward to being an active part and collaborating with the provincial government and with other communities across the province in terms of building that formula. The city's position on MSI is that the current funding formula works well. So our approach in heading into those future discussions will be to remain fairly consistent with the existing parameters around that grant program. In this year's provincial budget, there is, however, only $1 million of $4.6 billion in provincial health capital dollars over the next 5 years allocated to Red Deer for capital health planning. I think it's important to note that this is a small step that is certainly in the right direction, but it's important to identify that our community efforts are not yet finished because capital dollars for the expansion of Red Deer Regional Hospital are not identified in the 5-year plan. The study, which is of course good news, will likely recommend substantial funding, and we cannot wait 5 years for detailed planning or construction while we are in an emergency situation. In addition to the continued commitment on MSI, as I've mentioned, the province is also investing in affordable housing with a commitment of approximately 400 units across the province, shared through 8 communities, of which Red Deer was named. Although the opioid crisis was mentioned in the budget speech, there is no capital funding identified for either a shelter or treatment center in Red Deer and region. As it pertains to policing, the province highlighted increased funding for rural policing, but no additional funds for urban policing, which increases a long-standing inequity for policing costs in our region. I'd like to acknowledge that the province's decision to focus on rural crime will obviously help with the overall crime challenges in our region. We are acutely aware of the fact that crime is fluid and knows no borders. However, the province's decision to focus on rural crime is a challenge for urban municipalities because police funding is inequitable as it is. And obviously, as major urban centers across the province, we need to continue to focus on crime reduction, and particularly in the case in Red Deer, where crime is identified by our citizens as our community's #1 priority. The province also increased the funding for the Justice Centre, which was, of course, announced in last year's budget, from $97 million to $181 million, and spread this funding out until 2023. We don't have any specific details on that. That likely would be a question to defer to the provincial government. However, the zoning has gone through on the site. The province has acquired the land, so we are pleased that they are following through on this project. And we just speculate that it's likely a matter of cash flow and how they are funding the project. And certainly when they announced it, they had indicated that once they went to detailed design on the project, that there may very well be some budget changes there. So on a go-forward basis, I would identify the following key areas for continued advocacy before the provincial government. in response to what we have observed in yesterday's budget. Of course, the capital planning in the subsequent years following the detailed study that will be allocated in the $1 million. So continued advocacy with respect to capital expansion and infrastructure needs at Red Deer Regional Hospital, to continue to address the urban-rural police funding inequity challenge that is systemic across the province. The budget was silent with respect to revenue sharing on cannabis. In the federal budget, the feds had indicated that they would be allocating 75% to go to the provinces, and there is a strong expectation of municipalities that those dollars would flow through to us, as we are the ones responsible for a significant portion of the regulations and enforcement with respect to cannabis. And as a final note, also pursuing timely signing of the bilateral agreements with the federal government so that we can see the federal funding flow through to municipalities in Alberta, because that will be significant in terms of fulfilling our local capital plan as well. And then, of course, as we continue to learn details in the budget, then of course we will update the community and respond to issues as they arise. The point has to be noted that of the $4.6 billion in the capital plan for future health infrastructure investment, there is not currently an allocation identified in the 5-year plan for Red Deer Regional Hospital. In fairness, when we had dealt with the Justice Centre had showed up as a line item without necessarily specific allocations. That served as a cue to us that they likely would be following through on it. But I think in the context of the fact that there is $4.6 billion of infrastructure health planned within the next 5 years, I think it's imperative that we keep up our community advocacy because our local doctors have identified a crisis situation at the hospital. And certainly if we don't see infrastructure dollars beyond the 5-year plan, that's a significant time lag between detailed design and construction and for it to be fully operational if we don't see infrastructure dollars within the 5-year plan. Because we have a case where we do not have sufficient supply of shelter capacity, we are continue to be in a situation as a community where we have Band-Aid solutions, particularly with respect to daytime warming. Red Deer City Council had stepped in to provide a municipal response for what is primarily a provincial area of jurisdiction. So when Red Deer City Council had stepped forward with respect to daytime warming, that was to fill a gap, a strongly identified gap in our social service sector. And the intent of that was that would be an interim solution to see us through until there was a full response to our city and community advocacy efforts to see an integrated shelter come to pass.